According to sailing folklore, when the sun hits the watery horizon and a green flash is seen, it signals a soul passing between our plane and the next. Well, they were half right, except it's not just any soul, it's our next speaker. She exists in between the glints of moonbeams on hubcaps, and is known to let the air out of the tires and tie the shoelaces of bullies and brutes. I would not ever want to be on her bad side. She is Jennifer Davis.
Awesome. Thank you. Hopefully my soul stays with me at least until I die. But yes, I'm Jennifer Davis. I'm here today to talk about monitoring the unmeasurable. So just a heads up, this is not a technical talk. So if you're not into non-technical talks, it's cool if you leave. I'm not gonna cry. Okay, I'll cry a little bit, but only on the inside. So I'm a software engineer at Chef. Wait, there's more than one Chef person here. Where the rest of my... Where's my crew? Awesome, thank you. I need that. It's all the sparkles. I got to charge up before I advance. So how are we today? Is everybody enjoying DevOpsDays so far? I have to say I am super impressed by this event. I go to a few DevOpsDays. I am a core organizer as well as an organizer down in Silicon Valley, and I am really impressed with the quality and the content that has happened in this conference. So if we can give like a little clappy clappy for the organizers. Especially Alice up here, who's an amazing MC. So once upon a time, Catherine Daniels and myself were sitting in a conference and we were talking to each other about, wouldn't it be cool to do a book? And it would be like Harry Potter and the something. And the more we started talking about it, the more we started realizing it would be cool to write a book, especially to talk about the things about DevOps that people mistakenly think are DevOps and the things that are really DevOps. And throughout the course of the year, I realized there was something bugging me. Now, I've been at a few large companies, and I've been at a few small companies, and I've been at education environments, and there was something wrong with what I was hearing about the metric around the speed. Like, DevOps is about increasing speed. Because I more thought about DevOps as being like getting us all to be gymnasts, like really amazing Simone Biles type gymnasts, like really agile, being able to figure out when we need to do something, being ready for anything, balanced. So I kept asking Catherine, what is it that DevOps is not versus what is DevOps? Because there's something more, and I want to talk about it. And so this talk embraces some of the things that I feel like we're missing when we just focus on speed or latency or errors. It's talking about the things that maybe we can't measure yet, but things that we should pay attention to and monitor. So when I think about monitoring, I think about it as a big stack. Maybe not a big stack of fluffy pancakes with delicious fruit. Although if PagerDuty folks are here, if you could make it like a service, like pancakes on delivery when you get alerted, because that would make being paged in the middle of the night pretty cool. But when we look at our stack, our environments, we want to build resilient applications that can withstand failure. So we want to monitor at every level. When I was at Yahoo, I realized there was a lot of signals that were happening. Something would happen, and I would realize something's wrong, and I need to fix it, but I'm not sure how to monitor this, or I'm not sure how to measure it so I can be proactive. And as I went and became a consultant and chef, and I went into all these different environments, I realized, wait a minute, Yahoo's not the only one with this problem. These are signals that were hiding in plain sight that we just didn't focus on. So I want to talk about those. One thing to note is signals that are coming along and how we monitor them, they're not technology specific. We don't have to solve it just with technology. I've made this fake little example up, and it's manager centric because I wanted to show what I mean. So if we think about 3 individuals on a team, and their circle, rectangle, and a diamond, and we think about measuring the quality of the person's experience on one-on-ones, like are they happy, are they unhappy, are they showing up to team meetings? And then comparing that to what work they're doing. Are they having a good balance of task to project work, or is everything that they do toil work? So if you look at little diamond person, they're not showing up to meetings, but they're only doing tasks. They're only doing that work that might be burning them out. So maybe that's why they're unhappy. And if we're monitoring that, we can actually balance that rather than just assuming, well, this person isn't a good fit, we should fire them. So there's 3 types of signals that I want to talk about. Those 3 signals are easy to remember because top. We all remember top, right? Yay. Thank you. That's awesome. Now I have to add ramen to my signals. Technology, organization, and process signals. So the first one I want to talk about, and really this is all just a ploy to get you to talk to me about this during an open space, because I really want to hear about other signals that people think about here. These are 3 examples of the technology signals I'm talking about. I'm not talking about latencies or error counts. I'm talking about things like dependencies, consumers to producers, and value generation. So when I talk about monitoring dependencies, in this example, I work at Chef, so I'm going to use a Chef example. I work on creating cookbooks. And one of the things about cookbook creation is you can have dependencies on other cookbooks. Now, a cookbook is a way to define some part of your infrastructure in code. So if I look at the dependencies using Burke's dependencies, I can find that the Chef client, which is the application that will run on a node to start up the system to converge against what its set of policies are, it has a dependency on cron, log, rotate, and Windows. Now, Windows has a further dependency on Chef handler. I need to know this so that I can monitor if something happens in one of these packages that I know that I'm impacted. How many people were impacted by LeftPad earlier in the year? Not many. Well, LeftPad was a module that was available to install, and this is the entire module, right? 11 lines of code, and the point of this module was to LeftPad a string. Now, the author of LeftPad got upset, and he unpublished all of his artifacts. Everyone who was dependent on this package all of a sudden started having failures. Worse, when someone tried to republish, because the versions were penned, they couldn't republish the same version. So all of these languages, like React and Babel, along with anybody using it natively in their application, were all of a sudden broken. Now you could say, well, it's their own fault. They didn't host their own archives of things locally. And that could be one solution, but it's not a permanent solution. It's going to still be a problem further on. So this is something you want to monitor proactively rather than reactively. A second signal is monitoring consumers to producers. Now, I'm not talking about the problem that is the consumer to producer software issue. I'm talking about consumers who use software but don't contribute back to it, and producers who are actively participating in the creation and maintenance of particular software. Not just for themselves, but for the community. Now, this may seem like, well, that's obvious. Well, it's not just open source. This is also proprietary software. If you look at, there's too many consumers, then you're going to run into something like Heartbleed. So Heartbleed happened last year, and if we look at how many people were working on the software that impacted so many other people because we were all consumers, there's only about $2,000 to the organization for this software and one person working on it full time. So if we think about it, how many consumers are there and how many producers? Well, that's way out of whack. So how do we solve this? Well, it doesn't mean go create your own, because if you do that, you've just recreated the problem. Now you're the one creating or providing producers, And you might not have, it might not be your specialty, it might not be where you're getting value. So instead, donate some time towards whatever project that you want to have working, right? So Chef, I'm really grateful that Chef puts me on a team where I get to work on open source and help out the community, right? I'm working on cookbooks. We don't get paid for those cookbooks. They're free for people to use, and hopefully we improve them and make them more useful for people, the whole community. We're also grateful that so many people contribute to these cookbooks, precisely because of this problem. If we have too many consumers and not enough producers, this creates a problem. So you might say, well, my company doesn't have enough people to do this. Well, that's okay, because what you can do is pay people, other producers, to participate in that particular project. A good example of this is people have paid Noah Kantorich, I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. Noah has worked a lot on Chef type work. He doesn't work for Chef at this point, but he gets paid to work on Chef community projects. More people, more companies need to do this so that we can fix this problem, because Heartbleed is just the beginning of how many bugs and problems we're going to see in our environments. So a third signal is monitoring the value generation. So what do I mean by that? If I look at particular software and I look at what the model of creation of value is for that company, if that company is losing money by providing that software is going to go away, right? So a few years ago, when I was at Yahoo, I was watching the situation happening. We had Zimbra and we had Yahoo Mail, and they were competing products against each other. And I foolishly told someone who asked me, so you guys are going to keep supporting Zimbra, right? And I thought, Zimbra's awesome. Of course we are. But the fact was, we were losing money because we're supporting two products that competed with each other. So Zimbra went away. It got bought by another company. So what should you do? Well, monitor this and figure out, should I be using this software, or should I be choosing another solution that might not be as good now, but can be improved with my participation? So the second type of signal is the organization signals. And these kind of signals, examples are affinity, single points of knowledge, and burnout. So we want to monitor affinity. Affinity is one of the pillars of effective DevOps that we talk about. And I think it's one of the very critical aspects that is under discussed. The reason being, we don't even talk about it as a type of work that needs to happen, and it is a critical type of work. Relationship work, building relationships between people across organizations. Right here at DevOpsDays is one of the best places you can be at to build these kind of relationships. So what's the value of having these sort of increased, strengthened number of weak ties? Well, it shortens the time to get work done, because you know who to talk to about how to get something done. You don't have to be an expert on all the things, because we can't be experts on all the things. It also reduces communication barriers. If you go out for coffee, you should totally go out with coffee with Bill at Coffee Ops sometime, because that's another way you can regularly do this. It's going to reduce those barriers you have with talking to other people. It also builds trust based on regard, because you have that mutual reciprocity that allows you to talk to someone, provide help, and they talk to you and provide you with help. LinkedIn used to have this nice little graph. Apparently, it's only locked down to LinkedIn employees now, which showed you sort of a graph of who you were connected to and how you were connected to them. And I thought it was really useful because it could represent, show you the visualization of what your affinity looked like. The different colors were different sets of people, and you can see, like, I have massive Yahoo, you can't tell, but it's different colors where they're merged across. But my network is very wide, and it's got a lot of depth, because it's not just one color. And there's a lot of sprinkled in where there's cross contaminants in these different organizations. And I really wish LinkedIn would bring this back, because that's one value that I think everyone should be able to see, that is not about recruiters spamming you in inappropriate ways. You can actually see, where do I need to work on, and do I have a broad enough network? Right now, I feel like I could go anywhere, and if the job is awesome and there's availability, I know who to recruit. I know who to talk to about particular things, whether it's network appliances or security, whatever topic I need to talk to them about. We also need to monitor our single points of knowledge. Now, I'm not talking about the golden source of truth. Everyone should have one set of information that describes what is the right way of doing things. What I'm talking about is, if you're the single person of a particular piece of software or application. I was in this situation at Yahoo, and I could not figure out how to get out of it. Everything that people told me to do, write documentation, write checklists, train people, nothing worked. And I didn't understand, why isn't this working? Well, I grew up with this piece of software. I helped build and architect it. I understood it from the ground up, and no one else was given the opportunity. So trying to force feed this information to people wasn't going to work. So I became the single point of knowledge of fragility in the system. My system, as hard as I worked to make it resilient and respond to failure, and it did, it was not resilient because of me. And the first Sev 0 in Yahoo's history happened when my boss was like, you need to take some time off, and you're going to do it next week. And I was like, no, I think there's something wrong. I need to fix it. I just haven't figured out what it is. It's been going on for months now. He said, no, it's going to be fine. You're going to take some time off. No, boss, I really, really need to do this. And he was a relatively new to me manager. There'd been another reorg, and I had him as a manager for about 4 months, and he had convinced me. When he said he was going to do something, he was going to do it, right? He said, when you show me that you have value, I will totally give you a raise. He gave me a $17K raise 2 months later when he said, you are the most underpaid person I have. So he told me, Jennifer, if you do not go on vacation, if you read your email, if you pick up your phone to answer something from us, I will fire you. So I said, okay, boss. I went away and I came back, and I thought, what the hell? I have been a failure because everything is burning down to the ground. They turned off rights. We lost ad revenue. I was just like, I'm totally going to get fired for this. My boss was like, nope, I knew you needed this. And it's the story at the beginning of Effective DevOps when I'm talking about what happened and how I found the DevOps. Because my manager was like, you were the single point of failure in the system. And we needed this to happen so that people could understand that you're not the blocker, you're just part of the system, and you can't be part of the system. And so part of what we need to monitor is burnout. Burnout comes in so many different ways, but what it is it's a signal of the system. It's not necessarily the individual. There may be a problem in the environment that's causing it. So at the point where my manager said, you're taking some time off, I had gotten so grumpy and so just reactive to people making comments. Like, I could not deal with the interruptions or being paged at 2 a.m. yet again, even when I'm not on call. So when we look at situations and we look at systems, we have to understand, why are people responding the way they are? We each have a limited set of spoons. The more we hand out, the less that we have ability to handle. And if we're doing a lot of repeat toil work, or we're doing things that cannot be changed because the system says, well, you're the best at doing it, so you should go ahead and keep doing it. That's a problem. So you might think, I know what this really is. you're just not as smart as me. I can handle working long hours. Now, there is an executive at a previous company that I worked at that believes this, right? There's a lot of news and press about this. And I think that it's a huge problem because it sort of creates this sense of, oh, this is the way that we work, especially when it comes from management. The idea that anyone can work over 40 hours has been proven more and more across so many years, so many studies. We don't need to keep studying this. In fact, for knowledge workers, it may be that the max is 35 hours. If we look at productivity, you can see what happens. What happens is, for the first 2 weeks, we do get more done. And then we're telling ourselves lies the rest of the time. We think we're getting the same amount of productivity in the end that we did at the beginning, when really we're building up a deficit. So, more than 40 hours, you are not being more creative, not being more productive. You are losing out on your effectiveness. And in terms of team, you are influencing your team to copy your particular patterns, and that means you're being less empathetic. If I have family and you're saying, let's work 80 hours a week, you might be impacting how I feel I am valued in my workplace. Now, some people might say, but Jennifer, we need to have crunch times. And I'm like, that's cool. But be aware of what that means. If I have a crunch time, that means like 2 weeks out, maybe that's effective. But after that 2 weeks, I need to recognize that my team is gonna be underperforming, and I need to let them take breaks. Now, we look at small startups. They create this scenario of everybody pitches in, everybody throws in these till 10 p.m. Evening working. Well, I've seen time and time again where people who start out in the company that have burned all these hours, Zynga is a good example of this, they kick them out when they actually get to normal work hours because they're saying, well, these people don't fit in anymore. They're not very productive. They're just resting on their laurels. No, the system created a situation in which they burned out, and they need to take a year off. If you work for years with more than 40 hours a work week, you're going to be tired. You're not going to be producing as much, right? So the third type, now I'm going to get away from burnout because I get really passionate about it, and then I'm kind of it takes away from everything else. So we're going to talk about process signals. So there's 3 examples again. These are not all of them. But excessive gating of processes, life cycle of products, and hiring and termination. So when we look at excessive gating, this is a real challenge for me because I always want to optimize things. And I go into these environments and I'm like, why are we doing it this way? Think about a situation, you may not have this experience, especially if you're in the cloud and the DevOps, and you have never had to fill out procurement forms in triplicate in 3 different locations, go through a security review to make sure everything's cool, go ask for some VLANs, go ask for does your hardware match what your requirements are, how many different teams you have to talk to. Well, these kind of situations I see over and over again. I thought I just picked bad companies to start out with. Then I'm like, oh, as a consultant at Chef, I see that this is endemic in our environment. We build up situations, we specialize in what we do, and then we create these silos. The great thing about DevOps is we're going to eliminate these silos and start talking to each other. Stop having all of these excessive gates. When we have excessive gates, this is where we create shadow HR, marketing, and IT. Now, I am not saying don't do things for yourself to get your job done. What I am saying is let's eliminate the shadows here, right? We should be able to work with each of these departments. We shouldn't be going off and putting job recs out there in the environment, not using our HR processes, or doing marketing without talking to our marketing team so we're consistent with what the goals are with our team, or spending money on Amazon resources because, hey, I can just get it done, right? yes, I should be able to just go spend some money on Amazon resources, but as a group within my organization so that when I'm not using some resources, they can go back to the pool. Maybe talk about what the process is for how I get work done with my team and with the rest of my organization so I can eliminate some of this excessive gating. If there's maybe some SOX compliance that's really causing me problems, maybe talk to my legal team, make sure it's something I have to do, versus just assuming that, well, I'm in this environment, this is what I have to do. Back to that left pad issue. We want to monitor our software lifecycle processes. One of the really great things, I know I'm going on about Chef a lot, but I love so much about what we do at Chef. And one of the great things is that we had this piece of software called Chef Vault. It was built by the community, and we adopted it and took responsibility for maintaining it. It was called Chef Vault. And one of the things is, the company that had created it, Nordstrom, was no longer really using it as much. And so they came to us and were like, hey, we don't know what to do here. And we had this great discussion about what it is that would be right for our community. Now, how many people actually have discussions about the death of particular software, or how you're going to handle what your community is going to do if this does not exist anymore? When NPM did their postmortem, they realized they had a serious issue with the fact that people could even unpublish software. So while this individual had decided, hey, I don't want to play your game anymore, maybe he shouldn't have been able to unpublish the software. So it's something as we have more and more services where we're not optimizing those services and we're depending on other people and other companies, then maybe we should think about what is the life cycle of these different services and processes? What do we need to do to be aware of them? Now, this may be something that folks think, why would I care about monitoring our hiring and termination process? That's not my job, that's HR's. If you ever find yourself saying, that's not my job, that's not very DevOps. So, I don't want to add more burden to my job, but I do care about what it is that is happening for the people who are potentially joining my team and the people who are leaving my team. It is absolutely critical that we understand what the process is for people coming onto the team. If people are treated unequally, say the team is mostly a particular gender, a particular race, we may see that people that don't meet those particular standards are not granted access. And that means that in this small community of ours, people are going to talk about that particular company and say that company is not great to join. Then if I join that company because they're working on really cool, challenging problems, and I might be oblivious to the process, I'm going to find it really hard to hire people because people are going to know, no, you don't want to go there. Have you ever found yourself struggling to get someone to join your really awesome team and not sure why no one's responding to your requests? Just because you say, we're hiring for diversity, we want to have diverse teams, does not mean that you haven't already built up some kind of bad discussions around your company. Even more so is the termination process. Just because people leave your company does not mean they're betraying you. We all grow and need to go sometimes. And I have loved the places that I've worked at where we celebrated people leaving just as much as we celebrated them coming on board. It is critical as part of the process of saying hello and goodbye that we make sure that people understand that they're valued. So, I've talked about 3 different signals, types of signals. These are not all the signals that we could possibly monitor. I'm really eager to hear what other processes people think about, what signals there are there when it comes to technology, organization, and processes. If we want to build resilient, effective software, that is reliable, that anyone can use. We must have resilient, effective teams. We must be able to see and know that these things are going to work. If you're interested in learning more about the processes that Catherine and I went through, totally pick up Effective DevOps. There's a few more copies, it looks like, to be given away, so hopefully you get one. If you want to talk about it, I'm totally here. Thank you so much.
What do you think about the idea of a manager bringing a new person in and saying, welcome, we're so happy you're here. I know you will leave our company someday. That's okay. Talk to me. Let's plan for it when you want to.
I think that's awesome. I think that's much more awesome than saying, we want to create this wonderful environment that you'll stay at forever because it'll be so amazing, and never talking about the fact that there may not be opportunities for you to grow at a specific company. So being able to have those discussions with your manager, that's a sign that they're a healthy manager.
Also, in terms of termination, how would you recommend a company handle when someone's terminated for gross misconduct, but it's not known within the company what that misconduct was, and there's a confidentiality element to it?
Yes. So when first, it is critical that your company has a code of conduct or anti-harassment, even more than just what is legally required by the government. It's critical for us to have sort of the set of behaviors. And it's really critical for companies to not violate confidentiality agreements, but when this kind of situation occurs, to reiterate and say what the process is and highlight that there is this process in place. Not to go into details about the particular person, but to make sure that it is reiterated that people should be doing the right things.
I really like you to speak to independent contractors melding into a company. I know there's a lot of us that do independent contracting, 6 months to a year contract to hire. How do we fit into this whole scenario?
That is a great question, and one that I feel very strongly about. So if there are any leaders out there who are like, what the hell are you talking about, Jennifer? Contractors should be treated exactly the same as employees. They should not be left out in the cold when it comes to team meetings, big celebrations. They shouldn't be treated less than any other employee. So it may be like, I feel like there's a lot of contracts companies that don't put in and make sure that people have vacation time. There should be ways that companies apply that pressure to make sure that the companies are paid enough so that people can take that time off. Additionally, all the aspects of knowledge work, when we look at what we do, it's less about hours and more about execution, right? I spend a lot of my time in my job thinking. That doesn't have, I can't measure that output. So when I'm thinking about something I'm doing, that is time too. Now, some people also say, well, just get contractors in to do the drudge work. Well, then you're not effectively using people, right?
Hopefully I'm asking a question here that's in the scope of this, but how would you deal with an organization that refuses to acknowledge a disenfranchised group of employees that are screaming for attention and they can't get anybody to notice?
This is a really great question, and this is a good signal that should be monitored from a leadership perspective. When there is a group of employees that are not being heard, those employees should leave. Because we are in a point in our industry where we don't use our collective powers of good to change the industry as much as we can. And I've actually seen this happen where a whole group, some changes happened at a past company that created a situation of long hours. You're required to be in a glass room, and, oh, you don't want to work over the weekend? Maybe you don't want to work at this company? And the people left en masse, like 30 people from a team completely left. And the reason I say leave is if you cannot affect change, don't keep doing the same thing over and over again. Your leadership, if they are not listening to you, you cannot make them listen to you. And the only solution is to leave.
All right. Round of applause for Jennifer. The soul passing between our plane and the next, on her bad side, of bullies and brutes.